11th Discworld novel. And I can see shite. There you are. Okay, hello. So, we are chatting about Reaper Man, and oh my lord, I'd forgotten all the things that happened in this book. This book is gorgeous. It is gorgeous. It is gorgeous. I love it. So not only is it about our main fantastic, most favorite, the most favorite character of all Discworld time, Death. The main character is Death. This book has the cutest potential romantic partners and potentia in the entire Discworld novels, in just my opinion. It also has a predatory shopping mall in a fantasy novel. And the Auditors of Reality. There's a lot happening in this book, so let's begin at the beginning, and let's begin with Death of the Universe. His name is Lord Azrael. He is, the death of the universe. And the descriptions of Azrael is just, he is big. Really, really big. Very, very big. We get to meet potentially the least favorite characters within the canon, and that would be the Auditors of Reality. They are pretty much, if you take the stereotype of bureaucrats and turn up the dryness and the inhumanity factors of bureaucrats, and then you have an iota of what the Auditors are. So here's the thing. Death of the Discworld is a very human character. He makes his own personal decisions, and the Auditors do not approve of that. They don't like it. So they convince Azrael to demote Death, make him mortal. And at first Death is really happy about it. He's like, yes, now I finally have time and I can like live, until he really realizes that being alive means that you die. And I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I just love the entire concept of what Pratchett was exploring in this book. When you have an immortal being who is older than the world, older than time, when you have that type of character realize that they suddenly have an end. Humans within the fantasy world, they have continuation afterwards. They have something called an afterlife. Death doesn't. When Death dies, there is nothing left for him. So understandably, that is terrifying. But again, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I love this book. So the fact that the Death of Discworld essentially gets the pink slip, that means that people who are supposed to die don't really manage to die. They aren't immortal, they're just not properly dead. They can't pass on because there is no death to cut these strings, so to speak. And the main character here is actually, apart from Death, Wendell Poons, our old wizard from the previous book. So the poor old man who hasn't been able to hear or do anything for decades, he can't quite die. He is undead, and the wizards do their best. They really try to do all the things, the tips and tricks of what you're supposed to do when you have a zombie. Like, they try and stake him, they try to exorcise him, they end up burying him on the crossroads in the busiest street and a very busy time. So they weren't really popular with that, but that didn't work out. The only thing that happened was that Wendell Poons just lay there being like, okay. But that did mean that he did find a business card of sorts for the Fresh Start Club. And the Fresh Start Club is headed by Rexu, the zombie, who is, I swear, he is like a hipster revolutionist, and he is all for dead rights. The other members of the Fresh Start Club would be the Count and Countess Nosferatu. The Count, technically speaking, they're vampires on account of inheritance. They weren't bitten. The Count inherited the title and the land and the vampirism, and his wife, being a devoted, sincere wife, goes along. Takes it a little bit more seriously than her husband. It's like, I didn't know that you could inherit vampirism just by being last surviving member, but here we go. We got Schlappel, the agoraphobic boogeyman, Droll, the ghoul, Gorper, who I wasn't able to find out what exactly they were, Ixolite, the shy Banshee, who is a male Banshee and apparently potentially the last Banshee on the Discworld, so he's, I don't know, Ixolotl is one of those minor characters who I cannot really feel for. And then we got Lupine, who is a were-man. He's not a werewolf on account of him being typically a wolf, but on the full moon he transforms into a man, which is really, really embarrassing when you don't have trousers stashed somewhere. So Death enters this world and he actually finds employment on a farm with Miss, how do you pronounce the name? Miss Flitworth, I believe. And he invents a new name for himself, which is Bill Door. And I'm gonna call Death Bill Door from now on until a certain point. Now Bill Door, he did get to keep the horse, Pinky, which is really, really good because, I mean, Death on his horse, Bill Door and his horse, it's just, they just go together. It's really fortunate that he found this old, weathered, worn note left up by Miss Flitworth, because he takes on farm work and particularly helping with bringing in the harvest. One of those words that's just a little difficult to pronounce. Which is definitely a job that he is very, very qualified to take care of, to do. And the gorgeous thing about that part of the that main storyline, like A, and Windlepoons would be main storyline B, with Bill Door and his growing friendship with Miss Flitworth, and the things that Bill is learning by being alive, by realizing that time is passing, that there's no stopping it, and he can sense time passing, and he's experiencing emotions, he's experiencing fear and terror and hope at one point. He also experiences a lot of anger at another point, and it's just the fact that he is finally experiencing these emotions that he's never been able to do before, because he's simply not had a life in order to experience it. It does bring him into being this person, this individual, this character who we all love and adore so much. He becomes the Death that we hope to meet. And this is a book where that Death is born. And every single plot point, just every tiny little thing. Like at one point there's a mention of mayflies, another there's a coat of trees, everyone having a conversation about the end of days, about the concept of dying. Every single of these itty bitty points, they're all brought together. So what happens when Death isn't around anymore? Well, first off, there's an excessive amount of life force, because life has to go somewhere. It's not going its usual path. There isn't Death to guide it. So what happens is, this is just this entire concept is just, I'm flabbergasted, I'm in love. So what starts to happen in Ankh-Morpork is that these tiny little snow globes of famous landmarks within Ankh-Morpork, they just start popping up everywhere, and people get them. In the beginning, mostly from CMOT Dippler, because he finds them, and a lot of them, and he sells them. But the thing about these snow globes is no one knows where they come from, and then they start disappearing. and there's a lot of weird noises that no one notices. No one notices that these things are disappearing. And how this plot thread evolves is just the Magma's genius. Because what happens with these snow globes is that they start evolving into shopping trolleys. Of course, the Discworld doesn't know what a shopping trolley is. They're just like, oh, baskets on 4 wheels, and it's like, yeah, but those typically don't move on their own. Now, another thing that happens with this excessive amount of life force is that things are unscrewing themselves. Walls become alive. Old wood starts sprouting new leaf. There is a giant chandelier within the Great Hall of the Yonsei University, and these screws unscrew themselves, and the chandelier just falls onto the table, the head table of the wizards, and they just barely manage to bounce before the thing crushes everything. And a lot of very, very strange little things that happen. Like at one point, every time that Argentella is cursing, a tiny little strange creature comes alive. Every time he curses, it's just... The other thing is that because there's no personification of death, lots of little deaths pop into existence, like the death of tortoises, the death of mayflies, the death of trees, which is essentially disembodied and just going chop chop chop. And then we have another of the favorite characters, just the death of rats appears in this book. Another really fun character who appears in this book is Cyril, the dyslexic cockerel, who really tries his best to crow, be loud in the morning and announce the sunrise, but he is dyslexic, so every single time that he crows, it's not quite correct. So because Bildor is learning all this compassion and he's gaining these emotions and he's starting to think, you know what, rules are there to be broken, he actually ends up breaking one of the big rules, which is saving a life. And the reason why he is originally against it is because sometimes when you save a life, you can actually unbalance the entire universe by bringing in the potential of this life that was never meant to exist beyond a certain point. But he does actually end up saving a little girl, and he lends her some of his own very, very limited time. That is definitely one of the big growing points for Bildor going forwards, because that is the compassion that death has for human beings from this point forward is brought into the focal point in this book, and I love it. So obviously sooner or later there's going to be a new death of humans, this new main death. Our Bildor knows that when that new death arrives, he will be the first soul reaped, and he's realizing that he is really not looking forward to it. Like, he would much rather continue existing. So he devises some sort of plan to continue existing. No one has beaten death, and Bildor is really proud of that fact. But he has to try. While that's going on, the wizards end up fighting a compost heap, and then we find out what the deal is with the shopping trolleys. The shopping trolleys are kind of like ants or bees or wasps. They are a hive mind of this super organism. Let's just call it that. That has appeared before. Wendelpunch finds reference to that in one really old book. It turns out that the super organism, the queen, is a shopping mall. I mean, I can see what you were doing there, but I did not expect shopping trolleys and a shopping mall in a fancy book. But the fact that this shopping mall is a super predator is just... So obviously the title of this book is Reaper Man, and the correlation between death as a characterization, as an anthropomorphic personification throughout the ages here on Earth, here on the round world. Death has been imagined as a Reaper Man, as a harvester of souls, for a very, very long time. We have imagined him as a skeleton with a scythe who harvests us. We are the harvest, we are the souls. And Pratchett really took that concept and he really used it to bring forth Bildor as a character, and his grown realization of how much he loves and appreciates and respects the harvest is really strong. It's transparent. You pretty much realize what he means with the harvest, but it's so strong and it's so real, and I love it. I love it. This book, I love it. It has death, it has zombies, it has shopping mall. No, I did mention the cutest potential lovers in romance story in this book. So we have a young werewolf named Ludmilla Cake. A gorgeous girl, very tall. Just like Windlepoons and others, the first feeling that they get when they meet her, they just, for some reason, I want to pet her head because she's just a wonderful creature. The counterpart to her would be Lupin, the Were-Man, the creature who usually is a big pretty wolf who once a month turns into a 7 feet tall hairy man. I mean, technically speaking, nothing happens between them, but it exists in potential, and just that potential, I love it. But yeah, so we know that our Bildor defeats New Death, mostly because he got really pissed. He got so pissed off when he saw that the New Death had a crown. Because the New Death intends to rule, he does not know anything about the soul of the work. He doesn't care. So once Bildor has defeated New Death, he returns to his role as Death of the Discworld. He calls back all of the lesser deaths, except for Death Oras, because Death Oras had a really good grip on a beam. And he then goes to meet Lord Asriel, being in conflict with the auditors because they really want to him not to succeed. And Death asks Asriel for a little time, because during the fight with New Death, Miss Flitworth managed to give then Bildor some of her own time, meaning that her time was cut short, and it's only fair, that she gets some of that time back. On page 264, Death kinda... he really brings good points to Lord Asriel. It's the last sentence here, or the last thing that he basically says to Lord Asriel to hammer his point home. He says, "Lord, what can the harvest hope for, if not for the care of the Reaper Man?" And I just love that sentence. It's just... I can sit here and just reread it again and again, because it's just so honest, and it's just... it's sweet. It really... I want this stuff. And Asriel says yes. So Death has permission. He is given a little bit of time that he uses to give back to Miss Flitworth. And there's such a cute sequence of where Death is going around buying flowers, buying chocolate, getting a diamond, because diamonds are a girl's best friend, because he really wants to make this Miss Flitworth's last time on the Discworld to be the best as possible. And the only thing that Miss Flitworth wants to do is dance at the Harvest Festival. Just the entire sequence. It's just how Terry Pratchett describes them dancing and how... I just love it. Just that last time when Death and Miss Flitworth are just having fun as friends. And then Death brings her soul back to the place and time where the person who she loved the most died years and years and years ago. And Death is... he wants those two to be together for eternity. He has a really romantic heart. If he had a heart, he would probably be reading romance novels. It's just... you're so cute. And one of the last things that is a happy thing is that Windlepoons and Death meet on the bridge. Cannot remember what the bridge is called, but it's been appearing in the book again and again and again. And they just have such a nice chat together. And then Windlepoons finally dies. And he dies so happy. And the very, very last of the book is Death of the Rats, and actually Death of Lisa as well, meeting up with Death of the Discworld. And Death of the Discworld decides, you know what, I don't want to be alone and lonely like Lord Asriel. That means that we now have Death of the Rats scurrying around. And yeah, I really, really love this book. Just everything that happens in this book is just... I had completely forgotten all about the shopping trolleys. It's just the concepts of that this man could put in a fantasy book is just... That would mean that the next book is going to be Witches Abroad. And oh lord, I'm looking forward to that one as well. That means we are going to meet Granny, we're going to meet Nanny, we're going to meet Margaret, and we are going traveling with them. So until then, I really, really hope that you enjoyed this spoilerific recap of Reaper Man. I really recommend that you read this book. It's just gorgeous, gorgeous. Love it. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I will hopefully see you again when we go meet the witches. And in case you don't know, I have an entire playlist of the Discworld novels. So yeah, enjoy. Thank you. Bless, bless.